In this tutorial, I'm going to demonstrate how to create a parts list in Fusion 360. Now, Fusion can create parts lists automatically, but it does come with a whole series of limitations. The first limitation is generally it will order the parts in the same order that you have created them, and that might not actually be logical in terms of a parts list. The other thing too is it does automatically assign materials to it. I think steel is the default, which you then need to manually change. But the material library is somewhat limited, so you might find that you're not actually able to assign to it the material that you're going to be using in the real world. So in some ways I've actually found it beneficial to do this manually rather than let it do it automatically. The other opportunity that it gives you is the opportunity just to actually check the dimensions of each component. So I'll show you how you'll do that. So what I'll do, look, as you can see, we're in the drawing element of Fusion, and I've demonstrated how to set up templates and how to get to this part of the software in previous tutorials. So you can go back and have a look at that in the Heirloom Box tutorial. But I just want to extend your understanding in terms of how I've set this up. So I'm just going to delete this out now, and we'll come back to it in a minute. So we want to bring in our base view, and so in it comes, and it's not as we saw it before. So what we want is we want to change our orientation and change our scale. Now I found that 1 in 3 worked well for this. Still not the orientation that we want. So the home orientation is a good quick way to bring in a representation of the project. And then we'll just go OK. Now you can see it's gone back to the line drawing, so we can edit that. If there's any aspect of this that we don't like, we can just left click on it to select, right click, edit view, and we're just going to change our style. There we go. So now we've got this, so now we can bring in tables. So you can see that you can actually automatically bring in a parts list, and just to show you what it will look like, you can see it's automatically putting up some numbers there, and it's giving us a parts list, but it's not really giving us the information that we need to do this, correctly for timber. So I'll now just delete that, go back up to tables, and we can just bring in a custom table. So I'll bring that in here, and then we can start filling it out. Generally, it's best AS 1100 should always be in uppercase, so just turn your caps lock on, and then we can start. So I'm just going to go through and start populating these tables, and then I'll show you how you can start editing and changing things around. Okay, so now we're in a point where I might want to start editing the size of this a little bit, because we've got our length, width, and thickness to go in. So I've got that, and we can put another column in. And again, we can put another column in. And one more. Oh, made a mess there. Was in the wrong one. There we go. Now, obviously that last column needs to be resized. And we can play around with this as we go. So if I click away, I can start moving this around. So for example, part number, that column doesn't need to be very wide. So we can play around with that. Same with the number of column as well. Now it doesn't sort of necessarily snap to certain sizes, so you kind of have to do everything a little bit by eye here. And the other thing too is if you, for example here, it might just be easier if you just double click and select the text, you can make it a little bit smaller so things can fit a little bit better. Okay, so we'll just start 1, 2, 3. And then we'll go logically with the, we tend to go from largest to smallest and also most from least. So we'll go aside because we know we've got 2 of those. Then we might go base, shelf, and of course we've run out of rows, but we can just add rows. And we can just move it, we'll just move it sort of so it's not overlapping. We've got front, back. This part down here is a false front for drawer. And then we've got the handle, and we're going to focus on the handle for the next part that I'm going to demonstrate to you. So 4, 5, 6, and 7. So we've got in here we've got 1 base, 1 shelf, 1 front, 1 back, 1 drawer false front, and 1 handle. And then we've got our length, width, and thickness. And then we've got the material. Now, in terms of the front, that's going to be plywood. Same with the back. And same with the false front. Now, in terms of the material for handle and the sides, base and shelf, that will be a species of timber that will be determined at the workshop. But in terms of your assessment too, you might have a look at different timber species to specify what might be appropriate. So plywood, and then you can work out what you want to do for the handle. Now, in terms of getting the dimensions, again, Fusion doesn't do it automatically. You would actually have to specify that in the properties of the material. But what you can do, and I'm just going to show you some techniques here, how you can actually go and find out this sort of information. So we'll focus on the handle. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to hide everything else, and then we're just going to have a look at the handle. We'll go to the front view. This is where the inspect tool comes in. It has a keyboard shortcut of I. So let's just start with the length. So all we have to do is go click on either end. We've got a distance of 402 millimeters. So we know our length. In terms of the width and thickness, so we'll change our view again. And in this case, we can, I'll just turn inspect off to kind of reset it. I'll actually close it. Okay, we'll go again. So keyboard shortcut I. Now if I select at the very top here, and at the very bottom there, we've got 68 millimeters. And then in terms of our thickness, so just press escape and we can press I again. We can just then go from one side to the other side and we'll have 19 millimeters. So we can go back here and start populating this. So our length was 402, and it just doesn't fit. So we might make that 3 millimeters, see if it fits. Yep. Our width was 68. And our thickness was 19. And just to keep it all consistent, we'll make that 3 millimeters. You can actually override that to so that it's a standard 3 millimeters. But that's basically how you would do it. You can just check the dimensions of each component off what you've got in the model and then put that in manually. It is a slightly slower way than doing it using the automatic functions, but what you end up with is with a parts list that actually complies with the sort of information that you would need for Australian Standard 1100, particularly for timber projects.